today's workplace. Now, let me highlight a couple of things. 90% of individual contributors said agility is more important to their success than years back. And 95% of managers and above said agility is more important to the organization's success than years ago. They tell us that agility might actually be the 21st century competency for organizational success. For example, agile workers need to have social and emotional skills to understand when to empathize, or know when to step back from their biases and challenge their own assumptions. My premise is supported by 97% of those leaders surveyed that developing your agility starts with strengthening your emotional intelligence. Any questions at this point?
I'm watching chat, or you may raise your virtual hand by clicking on the reactions at the bottom of your screen and selecting the, the raised hand. Not seeing any right now, not seeing anything in chat.
All right, well then, excuse me, let's delve deeper and let me test your understanding of EQ in another poll. So I'm going to ask Sandie to open up the second poll.
Okay.
And we'll look at the poll and then we'll come back to it. So on a scale of 1 to 3,
I got to get the new poll. Here we go.
With scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being the highest, in your opinion, what is the defining trait of emotional intelligence person? So what do you think is the most key skill set that an emotionally intelligent individual needs to have?
Okay, polls out there. 5 of 39. We'll leave it up for a little while. Watch for your responses. We're just about halfway there.
Okay. Seems like a horse race, you know, with
I know, it is.
moving forward and coming back.
Just about at 30. Give it a few more seconds to get up to at least 95%. Since it counts Ken and I, and we're not responding.
No, we're not responding.
All right. 31 of 39, and we're still
okay, well, it's getting close.
32. Okay. Give it about 5 seconds here. 33. All right, let's end the polling and see what the results look like.
Okay. Well, it looks like the majority of you, 2/3, say that understanding how others are feeling is the best trait to have, followed by keeping an open mind, staying calm under pressure. Interestingly, no one has said speaking persuasively to others. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. But I'd like to say that no one answers correct. Actually, all the answers are correct, including speaking persuasively. Keep in mind that we all have some level of emotional intelligence. With this starting point, we can strengthen our current EQ skills and look to develop new ones. Now, again, several of you are fairly experienced and know a lot about EQ, so that you know there are many EQ models that you can use. There's the Goldman model, the Baron model, and one called EQ 2.0, and they all have sound EQ principles. The model that I want to talk to you about today is called Everything DiSC Agile EQ, developed by the Wiley Company.
Ken, we do have a question in chat that I think may help people as they frame this and what its relevance is for their organization. So Stacy asked, is this directed at staff and or board members?
I would say both.
Yeah, I would too.
Because if you're a board member, you're going to be dealing with a variety of different staff and a variety of different sponsors and the like, and you're going to have to deal differently with each one. And as a staff person, you're also going to be dealing with different people at the same time. Sandie?
As well as interacting effectively with your constituency, because they may come from a different situation, and you're going to need to keep open and be able to communicate with those individuals. And that will often take coming on with a different mindset to be able to do that.
I think the other thing you'll see is that different people come with different lenses and they interpret the situations differently. And we're going to talk more about lenses as we move on and how you can begin to understand the different lenses that people look at the world through. So someone on staff is going to look at the world through their lens. Someone on the board is going to look through their lens. Your constituents are going to look at the world through their lens. So it's a very good question. Thank you for that. Changing their answer. Anyway, the model that I want to use is called Everything DiSC Agile EQ, developed by the Wiley Company. Why? Well, because many people are familiar with using DiSC assessment. By a show of hands or in your chat, how many of you are familiar with DiSC?
You can raise your hand, or you could do a check box.
There I see other people.
Good.
So we have a number of people who are familiar with DiSC. It's a model that enables real-world change. As those who are experienced using it, it's simple and you can carry it around with you in your head and have conversations with others. We also find it practical and relevant. It can help you identify new ways to respond to difficult situations other than those we instinctively use. The more comfortable you get with it, the more agile you'll become, and more easily you'll be able to deal with change. Next, I would like to show you some learning steps from Agile DiSC EQ. John has raised her hand, and use to elevate emotional intelligence. So let's go through some of the learning steps.
Ken,
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Was that a question?
You're good.
Okay. The Agile EQ assessment tool is built around this model. It has a three-phase learning approach that we will also follow today. It starts with discovery, which provides insights into your DiSC style and what we call EQ mindsets that shape your interactions with others. It refers to the lenses I was talking to you before. A mindset represents our adaptive reactions to various social and emotional situations that come naturally to you. In phase 2, you will also be introduced to other mindsets that you may not generally use, but have value when applied to certain situations. And the last step includes the steps for how you can start adapting these other mindsets that don't come easily so you can achieve the best possible outcome. Now let's spend some time in phase 1, discover. And we don't have a lot of time to complete an actual full-blown assessment to determine your DiSC style, but we can do a quick approximation. So let's have some fun with this. What I'd like you to do is to get out that piece of paper that I asked you that you needed with a pen or pencil and draw a circle. You're not going to be judged on how well the circle is, but make it large enough to cover a lot of space. Once you've drawn that circle, I want you to create 4 quadrants in the circle. I'll give you a moment to do that. Draw a circle and draw a line to create 4 quadrants. Okay, I will now be asking you 2 basic questions about your personal tendencies. I'd like you to answer them in the context of how you might behave at work. Now keep in mind that we all behave in this manner at some point or another, so make your answers reflect how you act the majority of the time. Here's the first question. Do you tend to be fast-paced, speak quickly, express your point of view easily, prefer to read emails, memos in bullet form, and be able to make decisions quickly? If the answer is yes, I want you to put a dot at the top of the grid, just like it's shown in the visual. Now for question number 2. Do you tend to be more reserved, prefer to think about things or conduct research before making decisions? Are you generally modest and calm and consider how other people may be affected? If the answer is yes to this one, place a dot at the bottom of the grid. Now here's the kicker. You have to decide whether it's one way or another. You can't put both. Okay? Questions, concerns? Let's move on. Now here's another circle, I'm going to ask you 2 additional questions. Again, we all do this at some point or another, so make sure it is how you act the majority of the time at work. Now, using the same circle in 4 quadrants, place a dot on the left side if you are results-oriented or tend to challenge the status quo. Do you ask for proof when someone gives you their point of view? And do you place emphasis on quality and accuracy over speed? If you do, place a dot in the left corner. Now, place a dot in the right corner if you tend to be open, trusting, and loyal. You value cooperation, sincerity, and dependability, and you tend to be enthusiastic or show your emotions easily. What you should end up with is something that looks like this, with 2 dots at the end of one of the 4 quadrants. We good so far? Now I'm going to tell you in just a minute what we mean. Okay, here's a thumbnail sketch of your primary DiSC style. If your 2 dots reside in the upper left-hand quadrant, you have a D or dominant style because you are someone who usually is fast-paced, outspoken, and tends to question or challenge the status quo. 2 dots in the upper right quadrant indicate an I or an influence style. You are also fast-paced and easily express your opinion. You are typically accepting and seek to build warm working relationships and friendships with others. Now, 2 dots in the lower right-hand corner means that you have an S or steadiness style. You are accepting and seek to build warm relationships with others and tend to be more reflective when needing time to process things before you act. 2 dots in the lower left-hand corner mean that you have a C or conscientious style. Like the D style, it means that you tend to question or challenge the status quo, but you need more facts and proof before you are comfortable taking action. Let me also emphasize 2 things. First, it's okay if you do not believe this fully reflects who you are. This is only a snapshot, a thumbnail sketch, and you will need to take the full assessment to confirm your true DiSC style. The good news is, at the end of this session, we're going to give you an opportunity to get your own DiSC assessment. So you'll be able to see what your own true style really is. Talk more about that later. Secondly, there's no one best style. Each one has a different strength and brings something of value to the table. What I'd like to do now is to stop and show you a short video, take about 3 or 4 minutes, about the different styles and how it forms the basis for being more emotionally intelligent. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to bring up the video and begin to share that.
Make sure your sound's on.
Make sure your sound is on so you can hear this. You should be able to see this, I trust.
Yep.
See a little drum?
Mm-hmm.
Let me start the video.
We all have abilities that come naturally to us.
Good.
Certain skills or mindsets that are so second nature, so effortless. Using them feels like riding a bike. For Ava, that's keeping her cool when everyone around her is stressing out. Or setting aside her own preferences long enough to really consider other points of view. Those are both kinds of emotional intelligence, but they aren't the only ones. Because the truth is, there are many different ways to be good at handling emotional and social situations. And people have different natural strengths. So what are yours? That's where Agile EQ comes in. Using a tool called Everything DiSC, Agile EQ provides a simple way to understand yourself and the kinds of emotional intelligence that may come naturally to you. Everything DiSC describes 4 main styles. People with a D or dominant style are typically direct and firm. Their emotional intelligence really shines when they need to project confidence and persuade others. and are usually good at speaking up for themselves. Those with an I or influence style are generally outgoing and enthusiastic. They're naturals at making connections wherever they go. And they tap into the energy in a room by paying attention to how people are feeling. People with an S or steadiness style are usually even-tempered and accommodating. They often excel at understanding where other people are coming from, and their calm, flexible approach helps keep conversations harmonious and collaborative. And finally, those with a C or conscientiousness style are typically analytical and reserved. Their EQ strengths involve stepping back and separating facts from their personal feelings, and they're often good at showing restraint, even in tense situations. You might have one of these styles or a blend of two, like Ava, whose SC style means she has a combination of S and C traits. The strengths associated with that part of the DiSC map are probably easiest and most natural for her. But what about when Ava needs to, say, network with strangers or confront a coworker about a problem? In situations like these, she may have to reach for skills that don't come as naturally. And if she can't do that or doesn't think to try, that can create problems for her. Because sometimes our instinctive patterns don't work and actually end up boxing us in. Drawing on the principles of emotional intelligence, Agile EQ helps us discover our natural tendencies and recognize when to move beyond those familiar patterns. And that's what allows us to act, adapting to whatever situation we're facing. And that ability to adapt, to reach for a wider variety of responses, it's called agility. It's about stretching beyond our comfort zones when what's instinctive for us isn't enough. It means developing the flexibility to respond to different situations with the best possible approach, not just the one that's easiest. And really, the more agile we are in our responses, the more emotionally intelligent we become. And that empowers us to achieve things we never believed were possible, to enrich our relationships, and even to engage with the world in a new way.
So I'm going to stop sharing that and come back to sharing the screen. And probably now is a good time. Just to say before, I'm going to stop for questions, but as you can see, we're all a blend of four styles, and most of us tend to lean strongly towards one or the other. This shows us that what these tendencies are, and you should remember that while your strengths are valuable, there are also going to be situations where you will find solutions outside your comfort zone, which is what the video is trying to emphasize. And we need to develop the agility to adapt other responses when situations call for it. That means developing the flexibility to respond to different situations with the best possible approach, not just the one that comes natural to you. So Agile EQ will help you enhance your emotional intelligence and in turn, increase your agility. Now, I think this is a good time, Sandie, to stop for questions. What do you think?
I do. I'm looking at chat and I'm not seeing any questions, but if you have some, please post them in chat or indicate by using your virtual raised hand to indicate you'd like to ask a question. We are going to give you an opportunity in a minute to chat amongst your teams, particularly based on your styles, to talk about how you might use this in the workplace. I will share with you that this is similar to other, what they call 4-quadrant assessments. Myers-Briggs is one of those. We tend to like the DiSC because it's much simpler. And many of the assessments have been targeted and rewritten for different uses. So one on conflict resolution, there's some targeted for management, some for leaders, and this one happens to be based on agility and EQ. And they're much easier to digest and understand. Sometimes we get tangled up in the alphabets of the Myers-Briggs. Ken, I do see one comment. I feel like I have traits from all four of these. I guess I need a more thorough assessment.
Yes,
And
as I mentioned, yes, we all have bits and pieces of each one, but we do have natural tendencies towards one or two. And as I mentioned and Sandie mentioned, you'll have an opportunity at the end to be able to send away and receive your own assessment and a full report on your styles.
we
So-
often talk about people, it's almost as if you live in a 4-room house, but you have one room that you're more comfortable in than the others, and you prefer that room. And that's where your strongest behavioral preferences may lie. But there may be times when it's really important that you exhibit the traits from one of the other 4 rooms. And so you may demonstrate that. A little bit of situational leadership, for instance.
Great. Yes, mine usually is with a very comfortable chair. Excellent assets. Thank you. Okay. Let's have a little fun, if you don't mind. I'm going to show you a picture of 4 celebrities, and I'm going to ask you to see if you can pick which style each of them have. So let's start off with the top left. We have our friend Oprah Winfrey. What do you think Oprah's style is? And put your answers in the chat. And I'll wait a minute to see how many different varieties we have. What do you think Oprah Winfrey's style is? And then I'm going to show you something that tell you something that she says that will verify it. We have 2 I's, we have a D, we have an I question mark. I. Okay, DI, interesting. I see. Well, I think in this case, the I's have it and it's true. Here is something that Oprah said that I think will reinforce why she's an I. The more you praise and celebrate your life, the more there is in life to celebrate. Now, that's a very I statement. How about the upper right? We have Taylor Swift, very well-known singer. What do you think Taylor Swift's style is? Again, put it in the chat box. We have an S. Well,
Wow, agreement.
I think there's no argument there. Oh, SI. She obviously is very trusting in her relationship. D, wow, I. Well, it turns out that her primary style is I. And again, listen to something that she said that will tell you why it's an I. No matter what happens in life, be good to people. Being good to people is a wonderful legacy to leave behind. Now, again, I is a S is very relationship oriented. So interestingly, she really is an S because she's very much a relationship oriented individual. So sorry, guys, most of you got it wrong.
Well, she's an SI probably.
Could be. Okay, how about the lower left? We have Matt Damon, very well-known actor with his pal Affleck. What do you think he is? We have D, we have S, C.
All over the place.
C, CS. I have 2 screens, so if you'll see me looking to the left, it's really why I'm doing that. Okay, those of you who mentioned S or SC or SI are correct. His primary style is a C. I've always been cautious about overstepping any boundaries. At the end of the day, it's a director's medium, and if they don't want to hear from me, I just step back. So listen to the words. I'm cautious about overstepping my boundaries. That's a very C-oriented statement. Finally, we have our friend Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. What do you think Dwayne's? I don't think there's too much disagreement on this one. What do you think Dwayne's primary style is? D.
Mary Beth even gave him a plus.
D. Well, you're all correct. Listen to one of his statements and you'll see why. If something stands between you and your success, move it. Never be denied. Now, I hope you're curious as I am about how many of us fall into one of the 4 DiSC styles. Now, normally we would try to use annotate and show you where the majority of people's styles are here, but I'm going to have to go with chat, unfortunately. So if you don't mind, let's see kind of the variety of styles we have with us today. So based on what you did, I think I'm married to him. That's very good. Interestingly enough, Mary Beth. Okay, Mary Alice and I, we still have more people coming in, by the way, just to let you know. SEs, SIs, SCs, Cs, I's. Come on, do we have any D's? We have to have a D in this group. Megan says S. Shelby says C. Jennifer Scott, she admitted. Jennifer, congratulations. Colleen, a D. Okay.
One thing you can do if you'd like is rename yourself and put your letters in front of your name, as I just did.
Yes, what you do is you go to your name, you'll see more, and it says rename, and at the end of your name you can add your style.
Or at the beginning, so we can see it.
Yes. Yeah. So let's see if we have any people changing the style. In any event, while you're doing that, you may be interested in knowing what percentage of the population falls into the different styles. Karen knows how to use the annotate button. Thank you, Karen. Any guesses as to what the population falls into? Are they mostly D's? Are they mostly I's? Are they mostly C's? Are we mostly S's? Any guesses? I's, S's, okay. Again, for the sake of time, I'm going to move forward, and believe it or not, we pretty much fall out into a quarter, a quarter, a quarter. Now, there may be slightly more people who have the S style, and there may be slightly less people who have the C style. But based on all of the research that Wiley has done and the thousands of assessments they've done, pretty much the population is broken down into 25%, 25%, 25%.
You need to do one more click to get that little I one up.
Okay, yes.
No, backwards. There it is. Which brings a point up that people often ask, Ken, why is that I lowercase? There are lots of DiSC out there, and some of them have it all caps, but this one has it lowercase. Does it mean it's any less important? So I will share, no, it doesn't. I is just as important as D, S, and C. It's a branding issue that was started many, many years ago when this particular version of DiSC was created, back even before they were bought by Wiley. And it was a way to delineate this particular DiSC from others, because the organizations have put a lot of time into research and validation to make sure that the assessment proves true and is consistently true. And so they value that this particular brand of DiSC shows that, and that's why there's that little I there. It's a branding issue.
Someone mentioned in their chat that my experience that nonprofits people mostly are S's and I's, and that would probably be true because S's in particular are very caring, very concerned about people and relationships. So it is not unusual for anyone in the supportive organization, whether it's nonprofit or even in profit organizations that deal in customer service or HR, that they tend to have an S style, but it's not carved in stone. Thank you for that.
I do want to make a point, Ken, that this particular assessment is not, should not be used for hiring. It would not stand up to legal review because you cannot hire someone based on their behavioral preferences. You have to have something that's based on the job requirements. It is good once you get people in to find out what their thought patterns are and to help build awareness among the team and to help them communicate more effectively. And what we find is that it's not that people were ended up being that style. It's just that people tend to self-select the roles that they go into based on their behavioral preferences. And I think that's why we see that kind of thing.
Well, thank you, Sandy. Now let's move on. And again, people are still coming in. Talk a few moments about mindsets. This graphic that I'm showing illustrates 8 Agile EQ mindsets. I'll just highlight a few of them. Dynamic, initiating action in your ideas, influencing people and projecting a strong social presence. Empathizing, which we've been talking about with the S and the I styles and S styles. Reaching out to people, be compassionate, seeking to understand people's emotional needs and struggles, being supportive. Objective, separating facts from emotions and keeping the discussion focused on logic. And being self-assured, asserting your opinions and rights, projecting confidence in your ideas and abilities, and taking charge of situations. Now, like your style, no one's mindset is more valuable than the next. However, the needs of a particular situation will dictate which mindset is the most appropriate to use. A simple analogy might be that you need a hammer to drive in a nail, and you'll need a drill to make a hole for a screw, and then need a screwdriver to screw in that screw. Each represents the different tools that you can draw upon from your toolkit, depending on the situation at hand. Learning when and how to adapt other mindsets that you are less comfortable with will help you stretch and take a more agile approach to your interactions. Now let's look a little more deeply as to which mindset you tend to rely on based on your DiSC style. As you might expect, I am a D style. I've always been a D style, even over the years, but I've actually elevated my secondary style of I. And a D style has 3 mindsets: resolute, being self-assured, and dynamic. If I were an I style, my mindsets would be dynamic, outgoing, and empathizing. If I was an S, empathizing, receptive, composed, etc. They are also our default responses to situations that we often apply automatically without much conscious thought because we're comfortable using them. They're second nature, so to speak. So we're going to be going into our first breakout room in just a moment. So what I'd like you to do before we do that is to jot down, based on your style, what your 3 mindsets are. Again, if you have a D style, it's resolute, self-assured, and dynamic. If it's a I style, it's dynamic, outgoing, and empathizing. If it's an S, it's empathizing, receptive, and composed. And if it's a C, it's composed, objective, and resolute. Write that down on a piece of paper. Now, when we put you, we're going to ask you to self-select in the breakout rooms. We're going to have 4 breakout rooms. We have a large group. So in one room, I'd like you, if you're a D style, to go into that breakout room. If you're an I style, go into the I breakout room. If you're an S, go into the S. If you're a C, go into the C. Now, before you go into those breakout rooms, I'd like you to write down these 2 questions. Those 2 questions, number 2 and number 3. In your groups, discuss how one of the mindsets shapes your thought processes and tendencies or behavior at work. And number 3, third question or second question, how has the mindset been a strength and have benefited you in your life work? Now, we're going to give you about 6 minutes to talk about it. Don't worry if not everyone has a chance to answer 1 or 2 of the questions. And can you place the questions in chat? Is that something you might be able to help me with, Sandie?
I can broadcast the questions.
Okay.
It'll give me a minute to get up my PowerPoint so I can copy it.
Okay.
And then I can do that.
All right. Melissa, I hope that will be helpful to you and everyone. Now, again, don't worry. We're a large group. If you don't have time to answer the questions, I just want you to have a conversation. And we'll let you know when you have 30 seconds to go in.
And you will have, what will happen is it will pop up and it'll give you the list of all the rooms, and you choose room D, I, S, or C.
We
Okay.
ready?
Here we go. And I see a lot of people who haven't joined. So I can join you. If you don't, several people have gone to breakout rooms. You'll need to go to a room. I see people joining. That's great. If you need some help, let me know. I'll be glad to help.
Go to a room. Be sure the breakout room, click the bottom of your screen. So you need to help them understand where to find their breakout room. Sandie.
At the bottom of your screen, there should be something you pop up says breakout room, and it should show you. I'm going to start just assigning people to a room, and we'll see how that works. Just going down the list and doing them sort of randomly. So if you're here, I'm sending you to a room so you can at least be in a room.
Yeah, move down your, slide down your ruler and it'll show you the rooms. And there's a, right next to it is a join one. So Deb, you could join D. Nominee not joined.
Yeah, I'm getting most people in a room of some sort or another. I'm not putting Megan in one right now, and obviously didn't put you in one.
I may jump into D just to see how they're doing. Okay, people come back.
As you come in, you may need to unmute yourself if you wanted to speak. When you come out of the breakouts, you often will come out and be muted. We've had a few people join us since we started, and some of you, I just placed you in the breakout room. So if you weren't in with your style, I felt that at least you had a chance to communicate. You also, if you didn't get joined, you have to click the join to be in there. So Ken, back to you.
Okay, before I ask you any questions about how things went, we started about 10 minutes late, and so we'll probably continue 10 minutes after 4:30. And the reason for that is we have another breakout session, and we want to really give you more time to interact with each other. But I'm going to open it up for questions right now before I move on. If you have a question or comment on your experience in your breakout room, please unmute yourself and feel free to comment. I'll leave it open for a couple of minutes, and then we'll move on and continue our discussion. Anybody have any reaction, any ahas, any disappointments with what happened in your breakout rooms? And don't be shy.
And this is not a webinar, so you can unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself on your own, and please comment. Did it go well with John? Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Well, ours was fairly unremarkable. Let me get my video on here. As you can imagine, we're eyes. You know, it just everybody really personified the characteristics of the I, the outgoingness, donor relations, sales, marketing, empathizing was another trait that seemed to be prominent. Not so much the dynamic part, but the outgoing part, the empathizing. And, it appeared that all of us were pretty much, categorized correctly. We didn't all get to speak, but I don't know. Emily, what did you think?
Definitely felt like I'm with my peeps. These people I understand.
With my peeps, that's great.
Yeah,
My
which
peeps.
is
Somebody else said the
lovely.
same thing. Great to hear like-minded people. My peeps.
Yeah, and it's I've done a lot of Myers-Briggs and Myers-Briggs with clients in the past, but a lot of that sometimes falls a bit short for me in terms of really understanding how to work with people. So I'm interested to see how DiSC kind of gets to more of that kind of working with. And I guess the only thing that's a little surprising is we were all quite nice and polite as well, apart from John and I, who both spoke up. And I guess we're being true to form now as well.
That's good. Now notice how the I's were the first ones to jump in. Now, that wasn't surprising to me. How about you S's and C's? Anybody want to jump in there?
Hi, this is Megan. I was
Yes.
in group S. And so the few of us that shared, we talked about the mindsets, empathizing and receptive,
Okay.
especially in terms of COVID right now, the importance of, being mindful of other people in our work, whether it's other staff, board members, or the communities we're serving. And, recognizing that everybody is going through something different and you may not always know what's going on behind the scenes. So just being aware of that and, empathizing and being respectful and helping out where you can.
Well, thank you, Megan.
I think, we talk about how people self-select certain roles, and Megan's been the wonderful tech support throughout this whole conference. So how interesting that
was
she's
actually a different Megan, but
Oh, it isn't Megan. It's not the
Yes.
same
I
Megan.
think we
Oh,
might
I thought
be
it
the same
was. Sorry.
person, though, because
No, it
I
was a different Megan.
definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to keep talking, but we really do move on. I don't want to spend too much time. Thank you all. We'll have another chance to go back into your breakout rooms. But for the time being, you can still see the screen, can you?
No, you need to start sharing again.
I need to start sharing again. That's what I thought. Share screen and okay. You see the screen, correct? Agile opportunities?
It's here, yes. And
Okay.
you've got, there you go. You had your chat box open,
Yes, I
but now
know.
you're good.
All right. We just spent time talking about the benefits that our style 3 mindsets provide. At the same time, many of us have a tendency to rely on one or more mindsets. This may lead to suboptimal performance or results when we find ourselves in situations that require responses that aren't in our comfort zone. So to be emotionally intelligent, we have people joining all the time. To be emotionally intelligent, we need to become more agile by learning when and how to adapt other mindsets that may be outside our comfort zone, like these ones. Now, taking these actions, let's talk a little about mindsets and going outside your comfort zone. We talked briefly about why it's important to stretch, and you do need this in order to expand your range of options for how to deal with different situations as they arise. Some of us will find it easier to stretch and take a different mindset, while others might find it harder. Why in your chat box, why might you find it easy? Some of us find it easy, and some of us might find it difficult to move outside of our comfort zone into something that may be uncomfortable. For me, it's like old dogs, learning new tricks. I've done it for so long, it seems to work for me, even when it doesn't.
Are you opening this up?
Yes, I am.
Put it
Okay.
in chat, yeah.
Okay. Oh, in chat, sorry.
In chat, yes. Confidence. Nature of your preferences, steadiness tends not to like change. I get it. Oh, lack of confidence, not sure of the response. That's very good, John. Thank you.
Sarah says practice.
Yes.
It takes practice to get comfortable.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's something that we'll talk about in just a few moments. Thank you for your ideas. Let's make it a little real, and here's what I'm talking about. Let's say you're with a colleague and you're working together on an assignment. You have strong ideas for how to move forward with the assignment, but your colleague wants to go in a different direction. She's also excited about her idea and wants to make an impact. While you can see how her idea will work, you still like yours better, and you're determined to push it back hard to drive your ideas forward. Now, why might being receptive, the mindset of receptive, which is on the other side of self-assured, be the better option to go? In your chat, please indicate why receptive might be the better idea. Don't be shy, guys. I mean, I have answers, but you don't want to just hear me.
Well, while they're putting their answers out there, I want to respond to Mary Beth's question. She says, is this a nature or a nurture situation? And I will share with you that since the advent of brain scans, there's amazing amount of research that shows that there is actually a physiological difference in how our brains function depending on our behavioral preferences. And so they, asked people certain questions and had them respond and done the brain scans. And you can actually see that people who have a preference towards action respond differently and different parts of their brain light up. There are several books out there that show some of these scans. So it's fascinating. That said, there is a tendency for you to shift a little over the years, depending on your work environment or your situation at home. But research around the Wiley disc shows that the change is not more than about 12 or 15%. And I'm speaking in terms of a 360-degree circle, which is plotted on. And so, for instance, I'll give my example. When I was in the corporate world, I was doing a lot of analysis and reporting and managing a function. And I was more in the middle of the C range. And as I've moved into consulting and working with others and meeting various deadlines, I've moved closer to the D. So I'm now up at that line between the C and the D. So I've moved a little because I've learned to adapt over time to different situations, and that will happen quite often.
Okay.
So we've got 4 things that have popped
Yes.
up, Ken.
Yep, I saw that. I was going to say you don't want to constantly strike down other people's ideas just because you think your own is the best. I know I attract talented staff members because I have a reputation of being open and new to ideas. So being open allows them to It's good to shift perspective and see what it looks like from somebody else's shoes. Being collaborative now may promote similar collaboration moves in the future too, from the other end. Well, that's a really powerful statement. I have moved to a new area of the country, and I'm much more empathetic and quiet. My D has toned down. These are great responses. Thank you so much. Now it's time to discuss this in our second breakout session. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. In a moment, you're going to go back into the same breakout rooms you were in before. Those who are in the D style, go back to the D. Those who are in the S's, go back to S's. Those in the I's, go back to I's. And those in the C, you go back to C. Now, and Sandie, you may want to write this in the chat box. Want to choose one mindset from your style and identify 1 or 2 ways when this mindset may have adversely affected a particular situation. Before I asked you about the positive nature of your mindset. Now I want you to think about how it might affect other people. So choose a mindset that may have an adverse effect on a particular situation. And identify a different mindset that you can stretch, allowing you to adapt to better address the situation. And if you have time, use the scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not much and 5 being a lot, to how comfortable it would be for you to stretch to that mindset. So again, 3 questions. Choose a mindset and look at the adverse ways it may affect other people. Look at another mindset that you can use to stretch, allowing you to adapt to a new situation. And if you have time, on a scale of 1 to 5, how difficult or easy would it be for you to stretch? Now, Sandie, if I could we make this a 6-minute time frame?
I can. Let me change that real quickly. All right.
Only because of, I don't want
Yeah.
to run out too much time.
That's good.
Have
I've
time
got
to-
it. I've got it.
Okay, before we jump into the breakout rooms, anybody have any quick questions? You know how to go into a breakout room. Those of you who are new, you need to self-select, go into your participant box and see what happens.
Everybody's in a room right now, the same as before, and you just need to click join when you go to make sure you join the room.
Okay,
You
I
ready?
will see you all in about 6 minutes. We're back.
We could have used more time, that's for sure.
Use more time. My apologies, but
That's okay.
I heard some, at least in the group that I was sitting in, some great conversation. Let's take a few minutes to talk about, this is the last activity before we kind of sum up and wind down. Anybody want to share their experiences, insights?
And you'll need to unmute yourself because you get muted automatically when you come out of the breakout room. So feel free to unmute yourself and share.
Anyone?
Sandie and Ken,
Mhm.
Nora had a good question in our group, and I suggested they bring it up in the large group, and that's, how would you handle a difficult and stubborn colleague? Any suggestions?
Well, first of all, do you know what the style that other colleague is?
I would say a D. And not to be offensive.
So the other person is a D, and what's your style? What's Nora's style?
Aye.
I'm sorry, an I. Well, the thing about Ds, and I'll keep it very quickly, is they're very forceful. And people tend to back down because of their resoluteness. And the worst thing that Ds want is for you to back away. What they really want you to do is step forward and at least stand your ground. And to be able to say in very short declarative ways why you believe the idea that you have is the best way to go. They don't want to listen to a lot of fluff. They don't want to listen to a lot of explanation. They want to know very directly why the idea is good and what the benefit is going to be for doing that. They're focused on the end result. That's what is important to a person with a D style. So if you have a better way of getting to a better result, they will listen to you if you present it in a very direct, straightforward way.
I think the point is that it's important for you to build awareness around your preferences and other preferences from the different styles, because then you can look at it from what you perceive to be stubbornness could well be that they're not fully understanding and they don't have all the information they need. And so by recognizing where they're coming from and how you come across, you can also find that place to meet in the middle. Mary Beth has her hand up.
Yes.
I have a question based on some of the discussion we had. I was wondering if people who are from the direct opposite quadrant rather than the quadrants that are next to you, it's more challenging to work with them, with those people, because like we talked about as an I group, C's are often challenging for us because they tend to question us and we don't want anybody to question us.
It's interesting because you would think that would be the case, but I will share with you a story. We've done one activity we've done is to take Tinker Toys and put people together by their behavioral style. So we'd have all the D's together. And the group that took the longest to get anything done, you would think it would be the C's because they want to read the instructions, figure out how to do it and everything. But in some ways it's the D's because they can't agree on who's going to lead. They all want to take the lead. And so sometimes similar styles can have a problem just as much as across the board styles.
Thank you, Mary Beth. We're coming to the close of this, so if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of begin to close some things, close the loop on some things. Well, first of all, thank you. I just want to point out that if you do, as we wind out our presentation, here's just one example of how the EQ, Agile EQ tool will help you to begin stretching your mindsets and being more agile. And this comes from a report. So if you wanted to be more outgoing, several of you have said that you wait for others to talk. You want to be more outgoing. You begin by asking yourself some questions in the first category. I understand which feelings are easy for me to share and which take effort. If the answer to the question is yes, you can move on. If the answer is no, that may be something you want to focus on. I don't hesitate to talk about myself in front of others. Again, if you're comfortable doing that, great. If you're not, that may be an area that you might want to practice. Now, if you're good with beginner, you might want to start with the intermediate. I'm aware of the ways I might sometimes come across as closed off or impatient with others. I get it, happens to me all the time. And when appropriate, I adapt my communication style to make others feel more comfortable. So this is what the tool will help you to be able to use to help you become more flexible and more adaptable going forward. And again, I'm going to encourage you, if you like, to take the assessment on your own and find out more. So with that, I'm going to go to our summary. And here are just some things that I'd like to emphasize, and certainly Sandie, jump in at the end before we move on. The nonprofit and business landscapes are always changing, and lately it seems to be changing more quickly. Research has shown that agility is a 21st century competency for organizational success. Being nimble, being flexible, being able to turn on a dime, like many of you had to do during the conference this week, as we changed methods of viewing, is one example of being able to do that and do that successfully. So being agile is the ability to assess and adapt your approach to different situations. As Sandie said before, you have to be self-aware not only of your own situation, your own styles, but being aware of being able to read other people's styles and situations in order to adapt appropriately and arise because of changes in the workplace. EQ gives you that ability to become more agile, and self-awareness is the first tenet of EQ. Agile EQ is a tool that helps you reach for new responses that will take you in places you instinctively don't go. And the more comfortable you get and the more practice you do, the more agile you'll become and get the most out of every interaction. This in turn will allow you and others in your organization to become an agent for change.